Greetings, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining me on the planet. My name is June Allen, and I'm the founder of the Art of Greatness at juneallen.net. So, Happy New Year! Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you had a peaceful and a nourishing festive season, however you choose to spend it, even if you don't celebrate it. I hope you got loads of rest. I hope you enjoyed the stillness and everything that happens throughout this period. Um, if the season was chaotic for you, I hope that you've been able to find some sort of peace within yourself. Um, yeah, over these first couple of weeks of January, I know January can be quite a reflective time of year. So hopefully you'll get the opportunity to, to th think about things. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this video today, because I want to talk about a book that I read last year that was so profound and so it really stayed with me, really, really stayed with me. And it's this book. It's called Silence by Thich Nhat Hanh. The Power of Quiet in a World Full of Noise. Now, I would say, yeah, over the last sort of 3, 4, 5 years even, there's been this internal pull for me to just slow things down. I'm a bit of a workaholic. And for the first 8 or 9 years of being in business, I worked quite solidly, quite consistently every week. I would do live streams, I would do all of this stuff. And then, when it got to about sort of 7, 8 years, I could feel myself feeling quite burnt out. And then I took a break because I had to finish my therapy training and stuff like that. But ever since that time, I've realized that, I need to change things. I need to work differently. I didn't want to get carried away with all of I realized that I had a lot of internalized capitalism. Okay. I had a lot of workaholic stuff going on, but underneath a lot of that was a lot of internalized capitalism. Um, and so I didn't want to just kind of jump back on the bandwagon like I did when I first came into business and start doing all of these things and keeping myself busy and just overworking, overfunctioning, doing all of this. I knew that wasn't sustainable. So ever since then, I've kind of been exploring, listening to my body, thinking about different ways that I can work differently so that I can have more capacity for myself and obviously when I'm working with clients and being a parent and all of that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to share not just some nuggets from this book, but also to share some things that I've realized have been quite powerful around silence, around stillness, around solitude, around just being more mindful, taking time out. I think it's been overused quite a lot, by people. And I don't always think that people understand what it really means you know, to practice silence and why it can be so difficult for us as Black people, as Black women, to take time out to be more mindful, to take time out to practice solitude and stuff like that. It's really, really difficult. Now, I've been going on, I would say over more the last sort of 5 years, I've been going on a lot more with different retreats. I've spent a lot more time in nature. I've been a lot more intentional about my solitude and stuff like that, and it has made such a huge difference. But it's not something that's happened overnight. The changes that have happened, I've had to be able to really give myself the grace to do the slowing down process in small increments. Okay, in small increments. This is one of the first things that I realized when I started practicing a lot more solitude and silence and stillness, is that I was able to kind of step into more of a reality around what my capacity is. Being a workaholic means that it's been very easy for me to kind of disconnect from my body, disconnect from what my body is trying to communicate to me and stay in my head. Okay, I think I need to do this. I think I need to say that. I think I need to be doing this, that, and the other, and the third. So I stay in my head and I'm disconnected from my body. I wasn't really aware of my capacity as well as I should have done. There were times where I thought, oh, I'm tired, maybe I'll do this, that, and the other. I'll go to bed early, I'll go on retreat or whatever. But I didn't really understand the full capacity. I didn't understand my own full capacity until I really started being more intentional about silence. And it was really painful actually. It was really painful to give myself permission to really get honest about the fact that I'm exhausted, and I actually got tired of hearing myself say that I was exhausted. And I was exhausted because obviously I'm a single parent, just that in of itself is, takes up a lot of energy to be able to parent and to be present and stuff like that. Also, I'm doing a lot of my trauma work. I've been in therapy for since 2009, and I've done a lot of trauma work over the years, and it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of capacity to do that. And I have a lifetime's worth of stuff that I'm working through. And also I have to also say that it's not just my stuff that I'm working through. I recognize also that my ancestors are from Jamaica, so we're talking about 240 odd years of enslavement, and that stuff is still in my body, that's still in my tissues, that's still in my psyche, to a certain degree. The patterns are still in my psyche. And so, as I'm doing my own work, I have to recognize that not only am I unpacking my own stuff, but I'm unpacking a lot of stuff that's ancestral, it's intergenerational, a lot of stuff that isn't mine, But when I started to slow down and really started to pay attention to what's happening in my body, pay attention to the exhaustion, pay attention to the anxiety, all of that kind of stuff, then I could really start to have some honest conversations with myself about actually what do I actually need? What's happening here? And what do I actually need? I hear so many clients, when I ask them the question, what do you need? A lot of times I get silence because a lot of people don't understand what they need, and it's because we've been trained so much to always be on the treadmill, to always be on the go, to always be working, to always be busy in ourselves doing all of these things. And we don't, the system doesn't want us to rest. The system doesn't want us to be in solitude because we might start to think. When we start to slow things down, and we start to feel more rested, then we start to feel a lot more and we start to think a lot more in a different way. We start to think things that maybe we hadn't really had the capacity to think about before because we're constantly in survival mode, or we're constantly in busy mode, obsessed with work, obsessed with everything else rather than taking care of ourselves. Okay. So really beginning to understand what your needs are is really important. And for me, I found that a really painful process because it's like, wow, I know that I need this, I know that I need that and that and the other, whatever it is. If I know I need these things, but then the question then becomes, what do I need to do in order to change things in my life? What patterns am I going to have to change? What things am I going to have to do? What things am I going to have to own? What things am I going to need to let go of in order for me to meet these needs? And yeah, I recognize that I've been depriving myself of a lot of things because I had so many things that I was thinking that I had to do, so many, and obviously being a parent, running my business, doing all this kind of stuff, sometimes it's easy for me to put myself on the back burner or to say, oh, I'll do that tomorrow or whatever it is, you know, but it's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. We have to be able to listen to ourselves. We have to be able to sit in the reality of our capacity in order for us to really understand what we need as human beings. I'm not even talking about, in relationships or stuff like that. I'm just talking about as a basic human being. We don't always understand what our needs are because the system has taught us that we need to do whatever the system wants us to do. So that means, abandoning ourselves. That means getting caught up in work, getting caught up in productivity. That's what the system wants us to do, is to stay focused on productivity and what we're supposed to be doing for everybody else, rather than taking a moment to sit with ourselves and tap in and say, actually, what do I need in this moment? And putting other things on the back burner, saying no to other things. And that's really hard because a lot of our identities are wrapped up in what we're doing for other people. We've been trained to do that, especially as Black women. We've been trained that we're not worth anything unless we're useful to other people. We're not worth anything unless we're useful to other people. And a lot of times, people don't really love us. What they love is what we can do for them, which is two very different things. And because our identities are wrapped up in usefulness and what we can do for others, that's how we get our self-esteem, that's how we get our self-worth, that's how we feel good about ourselves because we're making it about the other person. But that just it's only going to lead to resentment. It's not sustainable. It's only going to lead to resentment and burnout, because you're constantly doing things for other people because you obviously that's where you get your self-esteem and all the rest of it. But it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. So, this was an important lesson that I've had to learn over the last few years, questioning, why am I in certain relationships? Why am I in certain environments? And is it mutual? Are these environments, are these people, are these friendships, are these circles, are they mutual? Are you getting what you need out of these experiences, or are you just in these places because you know that you're useful to other people, but you're not really including yourself in those situations? That stuff is not sustainable, and it's only going to lead to resentment. It's only going to lead to resentment. But giving yourself permission to slow down and creating spaces where you can be silent. I have now in my calendar, I have a silent day. I have a mindful day on Monday where my phone is on Do Not Disturb. I do not talk to anyone. Sometimes I will, I won't watch any TV. I won't go on my phone or anything like that. The only thing that I might do some journaling. So I have a specific day on Monday, okay, that's blocked out, just like any other meeting or any other commitment that I might have. On Mondays, that's my mindful day. My daughter goes to college on a Monday, and as soon as she leaves for college, that's my silent time. I might go and have an Epsom salt bath. I might sleep. I might do some journaling. I might go for a walk. There are several things that I can do depending on how I'm feeling. But that Monday, okay, every single Monday of the week, that is my silent time. That is my mindful time. That is my time for solitude. And I have learned so much about myself. I have learned so much about my needs. I have learned so much about, even connecting with my higher power, connecting with my art, connecting with my ancestors. These things, sometimes I'll get downloads about certain things on a Monday because there's no distractions, because I'm not trying to busy myself doing all this other stuff. But it's taken me time. It's taken me a long time to get to that point where, I can sit with myself. Sometimes it can be difficult for us as Black people, as Black women in particular, to kind of sit with ourselves because we're afraid of what we're going to feel if we slow down. And I know that this is for a fact. I've worked with loads of clients that struggle with this kind of workaholic compulsive behavior, this busyness, because underneath all of that are feelings that people are trying to avoid. And the thing is, those feelings are not going to go away. They're gonna catch up with you at a certain point. They're gonna catch up with you at a certain point. You're going to burn out at a certain point. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. So at some point, there will come a time where if you don't actually become more intentional about slowing down, about rest, around silence, if you don't start being more intentional about it, you will become unwell, where your body and your system will actually do it for you. Your system will do it for you. So that you're then in a position where you have to slow down and you have to be in solitude and you have to be, you have to start slowing down because your body's like, actually, I can't do this anymore. And the signals will be there. The signs will be there. Your body will give you signals. Your body will give you messages that is begging for you to slow down, as did my body. And I ignored it for years. I ignored it for years. And that's what the system wants us to do. The system wants us exhausted, compulsively overworking, compulsively overfunctioning, because the system doesn't really care, doesn't give a shit about what you want or what you think or how you feel. It just wants you to be productive, okay? And then it will spit you out at the other end, exhausted, resentful, upset, you know, cranky, sick, and then what? And actually, if you think about it as well, when I started really taking time out for myself to be more, spend more time in solitude, spend more time in nature, all of these kind of stuff, that's probably one of the most liberating things that you can do. I realize it's one of the most liberating things that I can do is to slow down, is to be more mindful, is to block out that time in my calendar, is to nap, is to really just take more time for myself, and having more active conversations around it. Having more active conversations around it. I'm going to read a bit from this book, actually, some of the stuff that I'd underline, so you can get a bit of an idea as to why this is important. So the bit that I'm going to read about is, it talks about how when we spend time in silence, when we spend time in solitude, how it actually teaches us how to listen a lot more, to listen to ourselves. So I'm reading from, I don't know, what's this chapter? This chapter is, oh, it's not a number, but basically this chapter is all about listening. Okay. So it says, most of the time, our head is full of thoughts that we have no space to listen to ourselves or anybody else. If we know how to listen, peace can penetrate every cell of our body. Okay. If we know how to listen, peace can penetrate every cell of our body. Okay. Listening to ourselves is the first step to being able to listen well to others. Okay. Listening to ourselves first is the first step in being able to listen well to others. This is another really important thing about silence and solitude and being able to listen, because I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of us we don't do well in our relationships, is because we don't know how to listen. Okay, we're listening how to respond. So we're listening to respond rather than listening to understand the other person. Okay, we get caught up in listening how to respond. We're waiting to respond rather than listening to understand the situation and to understand the other person. And that again is only going to create more distance between you and the other person. Okay, when we start to slow things down and listen to ourselves, we have more capacity to listen to other people. We're not so reactionary. Quite often there's a lot of defensiveness. If we're having a conversation, if you're having a conversation with somebody, especially when there's conflict and stuff like that, there can be a lot of defensiveness because the other person, or you can be just trying to get your point across, so that you're not even thinking about what's going on for the other person. It's a two-way thing. It's a back and forth. And I know for me, the more I've learned to slow down, I'm a lot more reflective. And I'm not just thinking about what the other person is saying. I'm also tapping into how my body is responding to what the other person is saying. So it's not just a verbal thing, it's not just an intellectual exchange for me. It then becomes more a somatic exchange as well, because my body is going to tell me if I'm feeling defensive, if I'm feeling anger, if I'm feeling closed down, if I'm feeling that I need to take space. But it's because I've trained myself now. I'm learning how to listen to myself a lot more, and I've been only really been able to do that more because I've taken more time out for myself to listen to myself, to understand what my needs are, to understand what's going on in my body. And as Black people, we need to know what's going on in our bodies. A lot of us are so disconnected from our bodies for obvious reasons. You know, we're disconnected from our bodies because the system targets our bodies. You know, our black bodies are a target for the system. So of course, as a protective output, it doesn't always feel safe for us to be in our bodies because we are always being attacked by the system and by other people, even people that look like us, you know. There are so many reasons why it's difficult for us to stay present in our bodies. But if we can even understand, even when we're feeling disconnected, then we can do the next right thing for ourselves. We can do the next right thing for ourselves. Okay, so if you're disconnected, you know, maybe you do need to take some time out. Maybe you do need to slow things down. Maybe you do need to go for a walk in nature. Maybe you do need to go on that retreat. Maybe you do need to go and pause and go in your room. There are so many different ways that you can practice solitude and silence. It doesn't all, and the other thing I learned about from the book as well, actually, and just from my practice, silence doesn't always mean literal silence. Okay, sometimes just going out for a walk in nature, or I can be doing the washing up and practice mindfulness. You know, I can still even if I'm sitting, you know, at home with my daughter, I can still practice mindfulness and stillness and solitude and still be in the same room as her. It just means that it just means that, and that has actually freed me a lot because at the time, you know, when I first started doing it, there was kind of like a perfectionistic way that I was thinking that I needed to do it. You know, it had to be at a certain time, and I had to be sitting cross-legged, and I had to be burning incense, and you know, there was all of these perfectionistic ways that I was thinking that I had to be in order to practice silence perfectly. But actually, that's not always the reality. You know, if you've got children, if you've got people that live in the house, you know, if you might not always you might not always be able to create the perfect conditions in order to practice it. So you have to be creative around it. You know, maybe you could get up a little bit earlier in the morning so that you can sit with yourself, even if it's for 5 minutes, so you can sit with yourself and just sit and go inward and ask yourself, okay, I'm going to turn towards myself and I'm going to turn towards whatever feeling is there. And I'm just going to be with that part of myself. I'm just going to sit with myself and just be aware of whatever parts there are there, whether it's a, you know, a part that's just woken up and is anxious about the day. There might be another part that feels content about the relationship. There might be another part that's worrying about something that's going on with it. There are different parts of us that are going to have a different relationship with silence and solitude, but you're not going to understand what those different parts are or your relation or those the relationship that those parts have with each other unless you make time for it. You have to make time for solitude. That's probably, I would say, one of them. If you want to take on something, you know, pull something out of, you know, what you want to do for this year, I would strongly encourage you to make silence and solitude, stillness, you know, meditation, self-reflection, slowing down. Okay, allow slowing down to be a focus because it will have an impact on all other areas of your life if you just practice that one thing. And I know it might seem scary in the first, you know, in the first place, it might seem scary initially to kind of start doing it, especially if you're not used to it, or maybe you don't think that you deserve it, because a lot of people can get caught up in this. Oh, it's a waste of time, you know, doing this meditation stuff. It's a waste of time. You need to be busy. You always need to be doing something. I've got too much to do to be instead. You know, I've heard all that as well. I've heard all that as well, but it's not sustainable. Okay, that compulsive busyness, the running up and down, it's not sustainable. Okay, and you deserve rest. You deserve slowing down. You deserve to have your needs met, but you're not going to understand what your needs are until you give yourself permission to slow down. Okay, you could, once you start to slow down and you start to just observe yourself, turn towards yourself and observe what's going on. Okay, you're going to get so much more clarity about things, so much more clarity around what you need, what's happening in your life. It's what's happening in your relationships, what's happening around work and stuff like that. Because when we're busy and we're always compulsively doing all of this thinking and all the rest of it, it's hard to really sit down and think objectively about what's really going on for you, because you're always in, when you're in survival mode and you're constantly on the go all the time, you can't possibly think about things in a measured, sober way, because you're always on the go. You're always on the go. So, slowing down is going to give you space to really think about what's going on for you. It's going to give you space to really think about what your capacity is. Slowing down and solitude and silence is going to reconnect you to emotions. And I know that might not be, a lot of people might be scared of that, but you're a human being, and feeling your emotions and being connected to your emotions is part of being a human being. It's important. It's an important part of doing this work, you know? Trying to distract yourself from all of these things is really unhealthy. It can lead to addictions and all of that kind of stuff. So, the more you kind of give yourself permission to just reconnect to your own sacredness as a human being, to reconnect to your spiritual self, the part of you that is connected to source. You can connect to your higher power, God, however you understand it. You can connect to that part of yourself in solitude, you know, in prayer, if that's the word that you want to use. These are all it's all the same thing. Whether you're talking about mindfulness, stillness, solitude, these are all different forms of prayer. Okay. And it will help to get you out of survival mode and into possibility. Solitude and silence and mindfulness it will help to take you out of survival mode, because you're listening to what your needs are and taking action on those things, and bring you into hope and possibility. Okay. I hope that what I've shared today has been really helpful. Yeah, my journey of building my relationship with solitude will continue throughout this year. My word for this year is tending. So yeah, it just means that I'm going to be continue to tend to my garden. My life is a garden that needs tending, and I'm going to continue to do that. So, I think that this book by Thich Nhat Hanh is called Silence: The Power of Quiet in a World Full of Noise, is a really beautiful place to start. This is dog-eared to death. There are so many different things that you can learn from this. It's a really easy read. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science reading this book, and it will give you a place to really start to think about your relationship to silence and stillness and slowing down, and hopefully it will become an important part of your practice, of your healing practice, because I think it's underrated. Silence and solitude is underrated a lot, because we are kind of trained and everybody's busy, everybody's trying to get stuff done. But actually, slowing down has actually given me more perspective about how I can be more, not necessarily slowing down to be more productive, but actually the choices that I have made around what needs to be done just feel a lot more sober, just feel so much more sober. Okay. If you've got any comments or suggestions about anything that or questions about anything that I've shared today, then you can email me info@yardofgreatness.com. And I'm wishing you a nourishing, peaceful, still, nourishing, nurturing, all of that. So I'm wishing you all of that for this year and beyond. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.